afternoon, everybody. I am so delighted to be here. This is a really important day for us as we begin an entire year of celebrating a model that has inspired not only everybody in this room, not only everybody who's watching online, but people really, countless audiences all over the world. And so this model is one that we benefit from as a direct result of really good intentional work that has happened for the last 50 years. So while I am the only one on stage today, I'm not the only one who'll be celebrating it this year, and I am certainly not the only one who is responsible for the excellence of this model. But I am the one who got the real pleasure of being invited to talk about what I see as incredibly powerful about the model of Alverno College and how it has impacted people that I've had a chance to work with at Alverno. So I am a professor of education. I have been here since 2007. In human years, that means that the 6-month-old baby that I had when I came here is now 6'3". So that is how long I've had a chance to learn with this model. And during that time, I've had a chance to work with people at the undergraduate level, at the master's level, at the licensure-only level, and since 2020, at the doctoral level. And you'll have a chance to hear from people at all of those levels later in this chat this morning. But I thought it might be really a good way to start, to just ask, like, why are we here at all, right? Like, what is education for? Because if we think about, like, what inspires each of us, what ignites our souls, what really causes us to do what is, in many cases, very difficult and heartbreaking work every single day, it's because there's something going on inside education that gives us not just heartbreak, but inspiration, not just challenge, but really deep rewards. And so, of course, we're not the only people who think about what education should be for. So, for example, Doctora Antonia Pantoja says, you can't live a life that's lukewarm. You have to live a life of commitment and passion. So education could be about that, a passionate life. And by passion, I mean passion in that sense of doing, producing thinking, and dealing with making the world a better place, right? So that's part of what we're talking about. Malala Yousafzai, Nobel Prize laureate, it's one of the blessings of life and also one of its necessities. Leo Tolstoy says the only purpose of education is freedom. The only method is experience. Dr. Goldie Muhammad, who wrote Cultivating Genius and Unearthing Joy most recently, she says it's our job as educators not just to teach skills, but to teach students to know, validate, and celebrate who they are. Paulo Freire says it's where knowledge is presented to us, then shaped through understanding, discussion, and reflection. And then little-known American Oprah Winfrey says that education is power. It's power. That it's being able to communicate with people is power. And she wants to encourage and empower people. That's part of what has her motivated and ignited. And then other education titans, like Dr. Austin Doherty, longtime Alverno faculty member and one of the foundresses of this incredible model we get to celebrate this year, says the most basic need of our students is the development of a permanent sense of their own worth as thinkers and doers. A permanent sense of their own worth as thinkers and doers. So that's something that really brings together all the parts of a person. We didn't hear any one of those people talk about assignments. We didn't hear any one of them talk about grades. We didn't hear any one of them talk about classes and seats and chairs. It's about this stuff that's inside of education that incorporates mind, body, spirit, community, and heart at the center. So, welcome to Alverno and our 50th anniversary of our abilities-based model. Let's give it up. Here, right? So Alverno was founded in the 19th century by a community of German women religious called the School Sisters of St. Francis. And for the first several decades, focused really exclusively on that mission. It was to serve and prepare women for lives of purpose in hospital settings, in music therapy settings, in educational settings. But over time, people started noticing that this college on the south side of Milwaukee was doing something really special. And so over time, more lay faculty and more lay students started coming to this very special place. And we were led for almost 40 years by a really amazing leader, Sister Joelle Reed. Dr. Reed passed away in 2017. But if you want to talk legacy, somebody who served as a president of a college for 35 years, and over that time reshaped what the center of the purpose of the institution would be like, that has an impact that ripples out so incredibly far that at her funeral, it was a non-stop set of testimonies about how that work changed people's lives. One after another, after another, after another, that permanent sense of one's own worth as a thinker and a doer on display after somebody's departed the stage. But like any place, there are times of great challenge and difficulty and change, right? I'm coming to you here in the fall of 2023, and everybody on planet Earth has gone through something over the last 3 years that almost no people living had done, right? So we all now have a really big sense of like what it's like to go through a huge change, right? But change is perennial and ongoing. So in the 1970s, 50 years ago, lots was changing, if we think about that. With the role of women was changing, some key documents and foundational ideas of the Catholic Church were changing, the idea of the university or higher education and its role in communities were changing. And so here at Alverno, the leadership and the faculty got together, and they had two really important conversations. One of the conversations was, what are we for? If somebody's going to study mathematics at Alverno, but they're not going to be a professional accountant or mathematician, why is it still important to study mathematics? Similarly, arts, psychology, right? These ideas of like, what is it that you learn inside of disciplines and content areas that's not just sort of the top level headline about it, but it's the habits of mind inside those disciplines and inside those courses. So what is it that we're actually teaching, and why should somebody study a certain major content area or course? But also at the same time, these faculty went out to the community, and they asked people around us, what do you need of us? What do you need, principals of schools, of a well-prepared teacher on her first day of her first year of her professional teaching career? What should she be able to do, day one? Keeping in mind that we live long lives if we're lucky and we keep learning the whole time. Also, what do we need? Directors of the hospitals, right? What do you need of a well-prepared nurse on her first day of her first year of her career? What do we need of well-prepared social workers or psychologists or business leaders or artists or entrepreneurs? What is it that somebody, when they come through and walk across a stage with a fancy outfit on, what should they be able to do? And so those two ideas led to the creation of a framework that in 1974 was oriented around 10 key competencies. Learning in the context of managing one's life. And that was really about people accomplishing their personal and professional competences, making decisions, developing initiative, but also having these skills: communication, analytical capabilities, problem solving, valuing and decision making, social interaction skills, and on. This is a 1974 document. This is the result of work that began 50 years ago this semester. And like anything, it changes over time. So by 1992, in addition to the very fabulous hairstyles on display in this artifact, and shout out to our archivist, Sarah Schutkin, for all their wonderful work here to keep our story current, is that it had shifted in some ways from competencies to language around abilities. The 8 abilities every Alverno student must master: communication, valuing, analysis, problem solving, social interaction, aesthetic response, which has changed slightly to aesthetic engagement, effective citizenship and global perspectives, which is now developing a global perspective. So all of these abilities then are things that every single undergraduate student at Alverno has the opportunity to develop within themselves. So when we think about this, and when I've had a chance to talk about people around the world about this model, before I get to this slide, I say, what should a person well prepared for life be able to do? They should be able to communicate, they say. They should be able to solve problems, they say. They should be ethical, they say. And so they generate this a fairly interestingly similar vision of a person who's good at life. And then our 8 abilities here then are infused into every single undergraduate major, so that an Alverno alum, when they run into each other at a coffee shop, they can make connections even if they had very different majors. They know what it means to be an effective citizen in the world because faculty very carefully aligned courses to allow people to engage in the active application of effective citizenship, to get feedback on it, and to self-assess their important work in that area. So too with aesthetic engagement, right? A world without art and our response and our connection to art is a world without the Renaissance and the Eras Tour, and who wants to live in 2023 without that? Right? So it's really about all of these things that a person who's really good at lifing can do. And Alverno was so far out ahead in creating this vision that now when people have the opportunity to look at competency-based education, performance assessment, feedback, all these kinds of things that have been in the higher ed conversation for the last 10 years, people here have been working with this idea for much longer, which means that it's a much deeper, richer, better elaborated model. But we don't only have undergraduates here. We have graduate students here as well. Alverno's mission is extended to women and men at the graduate levels, both at the master's and the doctoral level. So what this abilities-based model then looks like is that assuming that people are well prepared for any career and any life path, what does it look like then when we are focusing in on the preparation of professionals? So for example, the advanced business outcomes for people seeking an MBA at Alverno include things that business and entrepreneurs need to do, be able to do, believe, in order to do their work well. Those include things like strategic analysis, execution, innovation, global and cultural competence, and ethical managing and leading. And these then become different in a different profession. So for example, our community psychology colleagues focus on developing theoretical reasoning related to individuals and communities, developing methodological proficiency and relevance, making sure that people are really adept at interacting as professionals, that they engage in self-monitoring and reflection, and that they have ethical insight and action. And then in my own home department, that of education, we think about that educators really should have 5 main key things that they're able to do. They should have the ability or the advanced outcome of conceptualization. So if you imagine like one of the best teachers you ever had, that person was probably really smart about their content, right? If it was a history professor, they were very deeply thoughtful about whatever their historical area was. If they were a band director, they really knew about all the instruments, right? But we can also imagine somebody that we may have had as an educator who might have been really a smarty about their content, but managed not to be the best educator anyway. Because they were missing some other things that in this model, educators need to know and be able to do and believe. So for example, in addition to being smart about their content and about how people learn, educators need to have the advanced outcome of diagnosis. They need to be watching people. They need to be observing their learning. They need to create good assessments. They need to give good feedback. That diagnostic loop has to be going on. Coordination means that they've got to set up an environment for learning. So if we imagine like a really well-organized classroom or a really well-run special education IEP meeting or a really beautifully set up virtual environment for learning, that's the ability of coordination. People should know where they are, how they can access resources, and so on. They should be adept in communication, right? Not only speaking, but listening. not only attuning to things that are said, but things that are unsaid, things that are culturally anchored and relative to people's lived experiences. And then the last advanced outcome that we use in education is inclusive interaction. And if you plant in your heart right now your favorite teacher of all time, I guarantee you that it's that advanced outcome that they were particularly strong in, because that is the pedagogy of the heart. Inclusive interaction is how I convey to people when they are my student that I am on their side, that I am believing in them, that I am demonstrating enthusiasm and passion for my discipline in ways that are contagious, that I am by their side in times of struggle, that I am against structures of oppression that affect and show up in education systems, and so on. So these 5 outcomes then that I know best in the advanced outcomes for education inform everything we do with our graduate students. And they're not separate, they're intertwined. And so when we think about these things, it's not that like, oh, over here I'm gonna be smart about my discipline, but over here I'm gonna be smart about creating a good assessment. Those things interweave with each other. So then that really means that if we've got this vision of the kind of person that we are preparing for life, it means that everything else that we do has to be in service of that vision. So we must have performance assessments because it's not learning in the hypothetical. We must provide good, excellent, detailed feedback because that's how people know how they're doing. But we also, just as importantly, must build in people the muscles and the practices of self-assessment because luckily for them, their faculty are not going to follow them their whole life long telling them how they did. They must do that for themselves. And here at Alverno, self-assessment is such a foundational central practice that it kills when it's a joke at commencement, right? We have had people write songs about self-assessment that are hilarious to the people within Alverno because self-assessment must accompany everything that we do. The person should be informed about their learning first by themselves. Because, as it turns out, assessment is teaching and learning here. And so that means that when we are engaging in assessment, it's because it's an absolutely integral part of learning. It's letting people know how they're doing and how they can get better at it. It's being able to do something with what you know, but also that this means that it's accessible to the students so that they can share their learning in real-world settings. So then that means that people who teach at Alverno also need to be very on board with this vision of assessment that leads to this vision of student expectations. So those of us who are lucky enough to be faculty here mean that we need to really understand, and those of us who are in important instructional roles in staff as well, we have to really have a common vision of learning, that it should be integrative and innovative, and we should have this common vision of assessment with important central ideas about those criteria. Because, according to many of the wonderful books that have been written by faculty here at Alverno over the years, assessment is an integral part of life. Assessment of students is a multi-dimensional process that involves the observation and judgment of the performance of each student on the basis of explicit criteria. And it comes from this idea of the Latin root of assessment, which is ad sedere. So, even though I'm standing on a stage, well lit with a mic today, this is not really how teaching mostly happens at Alverno. Teaching happens at Alverno mostly sitting side by side with a flattening of hierarchies and an emphasis on shared access to criteria so that people's performance is not kept a mystery from them. Instead, it is a conversation with someone who is committed to their learning. So it turns out that this is a pretty good idea. And that when Alverno started this 50 years ago, over those 50 years of time, it has been highlighted again and again and again and again by people who are saying what we should be doing in higher education. So much so that a few years ago, there's a very distinguished award in higher education assessment. It's called the Trudy Banta Award. And Trudy Banta was an assessment pioneer, spent a lot of time at Alverno, and so this award was named for her. And the very first non-individual faculty member that was recognized as a Lifetime Achievement Award was Alverno College. And it's because of this good hard work that everybody in this room, everybody on the Zoom, and everybody over the last 50 years has been working really hard to make happen. Because, according to one of our other really important foundresses, Dr. Georgine Locher, She says, we have learned that a student can learn to understand and evaluate their own performance, see the relationship with their own understanding and abilities in all their complexity, and take charge of the improvement of their learning in an informed manner. When we talk about education as freedom, that's what we're talking about. And so this then trickles out every place that Alverno people go, right? So in our local area, businesses notice. Our local journals notice. We're going to be having an upcoming community day here, and we've had community conferences on multiple occasions where we're bringing folks into Alverno. This is obvious because the people carry it with them when they go out into the community. For example, in our local area of Milwaukee, there's an On Milwaukee highlight that's called The Future is Female. Many of these people who have been highlighted in that series are people who have come through Alverno and then are changing the world around us in ways that are innovative, exciting, and are igniting passion in people far beyond these walls. So I've had a chance to be a teacher here for 17 years, right? So I've got a front row seat to amazing impact on students when they have come through and beyond Alverno. So just like the archives, my hair has changed over time, mostly in length, not so much in the craziness. But these are all our students that I've had a chance to celebrate at their commencement over time. And that really is just such a pleasure, such a joy to see people attain something that they've been working for. But that's not the last time I'm in touch with these people. Right? Thanks to social media, I have a chance to reach out to these folks all the time, and we have an alumni social media group. And so when I was asked to give this very talk, I said that the people who are best positioned to actually help me with this talk are the folks who came through and who I know. So I asked them. So for example, Nikki Mann, who is the first black teacher in the entire history of the school district that she teaches in Wisconsin, she says, Alverno made such a huge impact on my life. It challenged and transformed my thinking. It's connected to my responsibility to make the world a better place. I have an obligation to be a voice of advocacy for change. Most importantly, it embedded in me the confidence and courage to sit in places where I am truly underrepresented and know that I can be confident because I am qualified. Go Inferno, she says. Stephanie shares that she said, she learned to be confident and to be an advocate for myself and others who are not able to speak for themselves. What she means there is that she's an early childhood educator. She's working with babies. And she said, I learned to be proud of myself and my work. Jody says, because she's also a practicing teacher, I learned the ability to recognize differences in all your students, understand the unique ways each child learns. I formulated curriculum to be used as hands-on learning to meet the needs of all learners. Lauren, who this summer graduated with her second degree from Alverno College, is the daughter of an Alverno alum, and this summer gave birth to a daughter who they already know where she's going to college. She said, there is a verse in Alverno's alma mater, Alverno, a place where all belong, that manages to bring tears to my eyes when I hear it sung by our choir and fellow classmates. Alverno truly is a place where all belong, and the faculty are who deserve all the credit for fostering such an amazing educational environment. Alverno is a place where there's no set right or wrong path to becoming a strong, educated woman. There's only your path. Alverno didn't just make me into the math teacher I am today or the administrator I will be someday. Alverno made me Alverno strong. Elisa says, the things I learned from Alverno are unmatched. I'm better at following others because I reflect. I take feedback from my peers and my bosses with a grace and a constructive action-oriented growth mindset. I give feedback with the intent to support, develop, and promote reflection in those I lead. I don't tell them. I help guide them to it. I feel like I'm a coach, not a manager. I'm the empathetic, strong, visionary leader I am today because of Alverno. Sarah Ellis, who was raised on farms as a farm worker as a child and came here for our master's degree, she says, Alverno has inspired me to tell my life story. We have, as an alum at Alverno, Adriana Vasquez, who is the very first certified teacher to serve as Director of Education and Public Programs at the Milwaukee Public Museum. She said, I could seriously give you an example of how each ability shows up in my daily work, but I think the most prominent are communication, analysis, social interaction, and valuing and decision making. Like museums across the world, we are faced with a social reckoning. Decolonizing our collections, our exhibits, our programs, and even our mindsets is critical right now. I wouldn't have made any progress without these specific abilities. We got folks writing their own books and founding their own professional networks inspired by Alverno. Dr. Angela Dye has written multiple books, all of which have mentioned Alverno, and she has an empowerment framework that she uses to carry things on beyond. She says, "I'm forever Alverno proud." Kelly says, "I walked into Alverno hoping to find my educational strength. I walked out with a whole new world of possibilities. I'm so much more open-minded and aware of the world. I worked hard, but every instructor who I had the pleasure of having also worked hard to help me find the strengths they saw in me." And because we have this Alverno doctoral program now, one of the things that we actually invite them to do at the end of their program is present on their learning to each other in a mini conference. And for each of them, we ask them to fulfill the prompt. Now at the end of my doctoral journey, I feel blank because. So, they feel energized because the end is just the beginning. The work continues. I plan to inspire the next generation of educational leadership practitioner scholars. I feel resilient because I endured the test of marginalization in life and difficult times to never quit. I feel accomplished because I did this on my own. I pushed through obstacles. I didn't give up. I feel accomplished because I finished what I originally started in 2008. I have just begun to help this population because I discovered there are areas that need further research that can make a stronger impact. I feel energized, proud, and astonished because I learned that I could indeed write about something important to me and that I could, despite my age, find my place and finish something I started 38 years ago. I feel challenged because I know what needs to be implemented in our schools and the benefits the students will receive. I feel blessed for reaching the pinnacle of my academic career through perseverance, patience, and determination paid off through prayer and faith. So friends, when we think about what education is for, it's about that development of a permanent sense of their own worth as thinkers and doers, and that's thanks to the people here. Thank you. Alverno Strong.